All right, this video is awesome. It's got nothing to do with me, but I've got to share this. I want everyone to go check out Moose on the Loose. Check out this Moose chart, which just basically is all of Mark Carney's stock holdings, all of his conflicts of interest, which, by the way, there's over 560 stock holdings. 92% are American. 1.5% of his portfolio is Canadian. Over 100 conflicts of interest he has. Supposed to be in a blind trust, like as if he's forgotten what's in his portfolio and what's in his best interests. It's so ridiculous. Insane that he's our prime minister. But go check out Moose on the Loose. Check out this chart. All right, so if you guys really want to know about Mark Carney, this is where you go. You just check out MooseCharts.ca. I'm going to click on Miro here. And this is a chart of all of Mark Carney's different stocks, investments. And if you want to know about the green grift that Donald Trump is talking about in this upcoming video, or, well, the rest of this video coming up, I should say, you just go to this chart. And I mean, it has everything. It is unbelievable. This is some of the best journalism I have ever seen. And I mean, you got to go check out Moose on the Loose. Greatest reporting ever. And he's got, Mark Carney's investments, something like 92% are American. I can't remember who's second, but it's around 2%. And then somewhere else in third, and Canada. So his Canadian investments are about 1.5% of his portfolio. And a couple of the stocks that I couldn't remember, they vest in like 2033 and 2034, which, if you don't know what that means, look it up. But basically, he's incentivized to make those stock prices go up. And if those aren't those aren't Canadian, well, this isn't a hard concept, right? He's not investing in Canada. He says he is, and the companies that he's investing with, he's doing it with tax dollars because there's no actual private sector interest in anything that he's doing. So, you can go through this. I would, again, go check out Moose on the Loose. All of these green grifts, Stripe. We had this big heat pump thing they were pushing when he was the advisor to Trudeau. And of course, you can check out all of these videos. This is great. This is it's an insane amount of work. I'm going to show you Donald Trump's speech at the UN. Everything here is sourced. Moose on the Loose shows all of his sources. Whenever he's doing his videos, you can verify everything. Unlike the CBC, some experts say, and they'll never tell you who it is, and it's just to push some stupid narrative. Let's check out what Donald Trump has to say about Carney's green grift.
We must gather together. And it's a tragedy that we're all committed to reverse.
This guy goes on to give a big speech about the kids missing and all that stuff. I can't verify if any of that information is true, but what's interesting is there's no talk about Mark Carney's investments here in rebuilding Ukraine. Are they talking about that? He's going to profit off this handsomely. No mention of that. It's also sad that no one else is talking about this. If you didn't watch my channel, you wouldn't know about this because there's literally zero media anywhere else that is talking about this. That's sad. Why is it some random guy on YouTube that is bringing this up? The media in our country is horribly corrupt. What we've got here today is Donald Trump absolutely ripping the UN, the whole woke left agenda, eco-green, all of it. He's absolutely destroys it here. This is absolutely savage, the speech here. This is 10 minutes of his 1 hour speech. He goes off.
Any longer. You're doing it because you want to be nice, you want to be politically correct, and you're destroying your heritage. They must take control strongly and immediately of the unmitigated immigration disaster and the fake energy catastrophe before it's too late. The carbon footprint is a hoax made up by people with evil intentions and they're heading down a path of total destruction. You know, the carbon footprint was a big, big thing a few years ago. I remember hearing about the carbon footprint, and then President Obama would get into Air Force One, a massive Boeing 747, and not a new one, an old one with old engines that spew everything into the atmosphere. He'd talk about the carbon footprint, we must do so. Then he'd get in and he'd fly from Washington to Hawaii to play a round of golf. And then he'd get back onto that big, beautiful plane and he'd fly back and he'd talk about, again, global warming and the carbon footprint. It's a con job. At extreme cost and expense, Europe reduced its own carbon footprint by 37%. Think of that. Congratulations, Europe. Great job. You cost yourself a lot of jobs, a lot of factories closed, but you reduced the carbon footprint by 37%. However, for all of that sacrifice and much more, it's been totally wiped out and then some by a global increase of 54%.
I love that he brings this up, and he's going to go into it more, but China obviously opening a new coal-fired power plant every week. It doesn't matter what we do here on the West, really. America can make a bit of a dent if they wanted to drastically reduce their carbon footprint, but Canada, we don't make a dent, and we're already basically net zero, depending on the wildfire season.
Much of it coming from China and other countries that are thriving around China, which now produces more CO2 than all the other developed nations in the world. So all of these countries are working so hard on the carbon footprint, which is nonsense, by the way. It's nonsense. You know, it's interesting. In the United States, we have still radicalized environmentalists, and they want the factories to stop. Everything should stop. No more cows. We don't want cows anymore. I guess they want to kill all the cows. They want to do things that are just unbelievable. And you have it too. But you know, we have a border strong, and we have a shape, and that shape doesn't just go straight up. That shape is amorphous when it comes to the atmosphere. And if we had the most clean air, and I think we do, we have very clean air. We have the cleanest air we've had in many, many years. But the problem is that other countries, like China, which has air that's a little bit rough, it blows. And no matter what you're doing down here, the air up here tends to get very dirty because it comes in from other countries where their air isn't so clean. And the environmentalists refuse to acknowledge that. Same thing with garbage. In Asia, they dump much of their garbage right into the ocean. And over about a 1 week and 2 week journey, it flows right past Los Angeles. You've seen it. Massive amounts of garbage, almost too much to do anything about. Flowing past Los Angeles, past San Francisco, and then somebody will get in trouble because he dropped a cigarette on the beach.
If the environmentalists, if the left really cared about this, they'd want tariffs put on China for their emissions, on India for their emissions. That's not happening. It's all big green grift just to make money. Mark Carney's entire agenda is built on this, and Trump is obliterating that here.
In my experience with China, they are, amongst other things, very sincere and engaged on climate. This is a country run by engineers. It's a country that understands a lot of the engineering solutions to issues around emission. They've happened to have built real competitive advantage in a number of these areas as well. So there's a question of how, and there's almost a standing offer from them about how to engage in the global comments in and around climate.
The whole thing is crazy. The primary effect of these brutal green energy policies has not been to help the environment, but to redistribute manufacturing and industrial activity from developed countries that follow the insane rules that are put down to polluting countries that break the rules and are making a fortune. They're making a fortune. European electricity bills are now 4 to 5 times more expensive than those in China, and 2 to 3 times higher than the United States. And our bills are coming way down. You probably see that our gasoline prices are way down. You know, we have an expression, drill, baby, drill. And that's what we're doing. We're going to be much lower in a year from now.
America has those cheap gas prices because Canada is sending our cheap oil to them at bottom barrel prices below market value. They're able to refine that and either sell it or use it themselves. They're doing a lot of drilling themselves. They're getting a lot of energy. So combined, they have so much they can have cheap gas in America. If we had half a brain here in Canada, we would be having refineries and pipelines going out to the east and the west, and we would absolutely dominate. We would have so much money to pay for all of these social social programs liberal NDP leftists want.
But they've come way down over the last year. As a result, every air conditioner is like very uncommon to see one in some of these countries because the electric costs are so high. So while the U.S. has approximately 1,300 heat-related deaths annually, that's a lot, Europe loses more than 175,000 people to heat deaths each year because the costs are so expensive you can't turn on an air conditioner. What is that all about? That's not Europe. That's not the Europe that I love and know. All in the name of pretending to stop the global warming hoax. The entire globalist concept of asking successful industrialized nations to inflict pain on themselves and radically disrupt their entire societies must be rejected completely and totally, and it must be immediate. That's why in America I withdrew from the fake Paris Climate Accord.
I would love to see what Carney's face looks like right now, a reverse camera looking in the audience, him watching Trump say this.
By the way, America was paying so much more than every country. Others weren't paying. China didn't have to pay until 2030. Russia was given an old standard that was easy to meet, 1990 standard. But for the United States, we're supposed to pay like $1 trillion. I said, this is another scam. The fact is, the United States has been taken advantage of by the world for many, many years, but not any longer, as you probably noticed. I unleashed massive energy production and signed historic executive orders to hunt for oil, but we don't have to do much hunting because we have the most oil of any nation anywhere, oil and gas in the world. And if you add coal, we have the most of any nation in the world. Clean, I call it clean, beautiful coal. You can do things today with coal that you couldn't have done 10 years ago, 15 years. But we stand ready to provide any country with abundant, affordable energy supplies if you need them, when most of you do. We're proudly exporting energy all over the world. We're now the largest exporter. In the United States, we want trade and robust commerce with all nations, everybody. We want to help nations. We're going to help nations. But it must also be fair and reciprocal. The challenge with trade is much the same with climate. The countries that followed the rules, all their factories have been plundered. It's really sad to watch. They've been broken. They've been broken by countries that broke the rules. That's why the United States is now applying tariffs to other countries, and much as these tariffs were for many years applied to us, uncontrollably applied to us. We've used tariffs as a defense mechanism under the Trump administration, including my first term, where hundreds of billions of dollars in tariffs were taken in. And by the way, we had the lowest inflation, and now we have very low inflation. The only thing different is that we have hundreds of billions of dollars flowing into our country.
As opposed to Canada, that is losing tens of billions of dollars. New pipelines being built by Canadian companies in America, like Enbridge, TC. TC, a company used to be called TransCanada, renamed themselves because it's better for business doing it in America to just be called TC. And Mark Carney rolling out his net zero agenda, so what, we can have more trade with Europe and the UK? Who cares? This is a green grift.
But this is how we will ensure that the system works for everyone and is sustainable into the future. We're also using tariffs to defend our sovereignty and security throughout the world, including against nations that have taken advantage of former U.S. administrations for decades, including the most corrupt, incompetent administration in history, the sleepy Joe Biden administration.
So he goes on to talk about tariffs more and other topics, but that was his section on green eco, ripping the UN and Mark Carney and all these leftists, the new one. Trump just nuked the entire globalist agenda in one line. Why should strong nations cripple themselves just to please a corrupt elite? That's it. That line sums it up. They want us weak, divided, and broke. Best speech I've heard in my lifetime, but it will fall on deaf ears in the political class of the UK. Same goes in France, Australia, Portugal, and Canada.
So that's Moose on the Loose. You saw down the bottom there. Go subscribe to his channel. The guy is doing phenomenal work. He's got about almost 170,000 subscribers. He should be at 1 million subscribers, 2 million subscribers. You don't hear a peep out of the CBC about our prime minister, all of his treasonous investments that are just totally screwing over our country. We had negative GDP growth in the last quarter, about a year's worth of negative GDP growth, unheard of. He's spending all of this money, this public money. You don't incentivize a company to make something work if you just give them all the money up front. That's not how it works. If there's an actual business case and it's profitable and you can get out of the way with regulation, then the companies will do it. You saw it there. TC, formerly TransCanada, right? They're building in the United States. It's absurd. So that's where they're putting their own money in, right? Private money goes in, and you have a profitable project. You build it. They invest their own money, and it comes out the other end, and they are incentivized to make it work because they have to recoup the money they've invested. And then you don't have to use tax dollars. But when you do use tax dollars, and you just throw it at the companies that Mark Carney's got investments in, like, let's say, the housing, you've heard a bit about that. So there's a company called Modular Group. They're going to build modular homes. So they're going to get like $500 million to build all these homes. And then what happens to them after they're built? There's no incentive. There's no auditing. There's no, you must have completed units. No, it's just build them. They might sit and rot somewhere because you still have to deal with provincial and municipal zoning, water, sewage, where, we have to rezone where we're going to put all these homes. So it doesn't even matter. So, and of course, if there's not a market for it, it won't matter. It can totally collapse. That company's already made their money because they've profited. They've got the money up front. So they're only going to build whatever they build so that they maintain their profit. And whether people live in them or not, like them or not, whether they get zoned and get put anywhere and are hooked up to sewage and water, it won't matter. They're still going to profit. So there's zero incentive to actually make it work. There's not a business case for it, or it would already be happening, right? By the private sector. You think these companies don't want to make money? Of course they do. But they can't do it in Canada. That's why our GDP sucks. This is the greatest speech that I've ever heard from Trump. I hadn't heard him talk too much about this, and I was getting a little worried. So I'm happy to know that he knows about it and that this is the stance he's taking. Because, like Moose said, we should be so rich. We have, I think, the third largest oil reserves in the world for oil, gas, bitumen, whatever you want to call it. And we don't develop it. We've got all these stupid laws in place, and Mark Carney has no interest in developing it. It's all going to be green grift, basically just taking taxpayer money and putting it into the coffers of his buddies, his interests, his stock portfolio at the expense of Canada. And by the time some of these stupid Liberal voters ever figure it out, it's really going to be a problem, because for those people to feel the pain, Canada is going to have to get really bad. And I mean, we're already terrible, right? By every metric, any metric that matters: housing, crime, cost of living, immigration, healthcare. I mean, you name it. We have no investment, GDP shrinking. I could go on and on. So I've shared so much of this video because I want people to know who Moose on the Loose is. He is my favorite independent journalist. I mean, obviously Canada and Canadian politics are a little closer to my heart, but he does phenomenal work. And so go check out MooseCharts.ca. Have some fun with that. And you can even put tips and stuff on there. I don't know how exactly that works, but he can check all that. And he's been working on that for months and months. And it's phenomenal work. So go subscribe to Moose on the Loose. He's absolutely phenomenal. True Canadian patriot. I love the guy.